Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was smart, athletic, and driven, someone with her whole life ahead of her. Growing up in Hanson, Massachusetts, Maura was the fourth of 5 children. Her father, Fred Murray, was known to be dedicated and hardworking, always pushing his kids to excel. Maura was a star on her high school track team, a standout athlete who competed at the top level. She went on to study chemical engineering at West Point before transferring to UMass to pursue nursing. At UMass, she continued to excel academically, but those closest to her began to notice cracks beneath the surface. Despite her achievements, there were whispers of personal struggles and mounting pressures. Still, from the outside, it seemed like her life was on the right track, until everything began to unravel, leading to one of the most perplexing disappearances in recent history. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Maura's actions hinted at careful planning. On Saturday, February 7, 2004, her father, Fred Murray, drove up to Amherst to spend time with her. They spent part of the day shopping for a new car for Maura, a plan they had discussed for some time. That evening, the two had dinner before Maura borrowed her father's Toyota Corolla to attend a campus party. But that night took an unexpected turn. Around 3:30 a.m., on her way back from the party, Maura crashed her father's car into a guardrail. The damage was significant, but she wasn't hurt. Her father was understandably frustrated, but reassured her that the insurance would take care of it. Maura seemed apologetic, and the two planned to fill out insurance forms the next day. On Sunday, February 8th, Fred rented a car and dropped Maura back at her dorm. He would later call her that evening to finalize the insurance paperwork. He didn't know it at the time, but that would be the last conversation he would ever have with his daughter. Maura's movements on Monday, February 9th, seemed deliberate and carefully organized. At around 1 p.m., she sent emails to her professors and work supervisor, informing them of a family emergency and that she would be out of town for a week. But her family would later confirm there was no emergency. Before she left, Maura did a series of things that made it clear she was planning for some kind of trip. She withdrew $280 from her bank account. She went to a liquor store and purchased a box of wine, vodka, and Bailey's Irish Cream. She returned to her dorm and packed her belongings into boxes, even removing photos from her walls, as if she didn't intend to come back. She checked her voicemail and made a final call to Billy Roush, her boyfriend who was stationed in Oklahoma. He missed her call, but she left a voicemail. Billy stated that the message was just a woman breathing, possibly a whimper. He ended up dialing the number back and stated it had been a prepaid calling card. What raised more eyebrows was Maura's internet search history. She had been looking up directions to Burlington, Vermont, and rental properties in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Some speculate she was planning a getaway. Others wonder if she was meeting someone, but no one knows for sure. Maura got into her car and began her drive north. She took Interstate 91 before cutting across Route 112, a rural, snow-covered road that wound through the White Mountains. At around 7 p.m., locals reported seeing her car skid off Route 112 in Woodsville, New Hampshire. It had crashed into a snowbank with visible front-end damage, a cracked windshield, and deployed airbags. A school bus driver named Butch Atwood happened upon the scene and stopped to help. He described Maura as appearing uninjured but visibly shaken. When he offered to call for help, she insisted that she had already contacted roadside assistance, but there was no cell service in that area. Maura hadn't called anyone. Atwood left and drove home, which wasn't too far from the scene to make the call himself. But when police arrived 10 minutes later, Maura was gone. Her car was still there, locked with her belongings inside. Police also stated there were no signs of a struggle. The box of wine was spilled in the back seat, and her phone, wallet, and keys were missing. A single unexplained clue remained, a rag stuffed into the Saturn's tailpipe. Something her father later mentioned was a trick to prevent the car from smoking. Police and K9 units were called in, and scent dogs tracked her trail about 100 yards east of the crash site, but it suddenly vanished as if she had been picked up by another vehicle or simply disappeared into thin air. Despite extensive searches, no footprints, no evidence, and no clear direction of where she went were ever found. It was as if Maura had simply vanished into the cold New Hampshire night. Maura Murray's sudden disappearance left a trail of questions and very few answers. As days turned into weeks, theories about what happened to her began to surface, each more mysterious than the last. Some believed Maura's actions leading up to her disappearance pointed to careful planning. She had emailed her professors about a family emergency that didn't exist, packed up her dorm room, and searched for rental properties in the White Mountains. To some, it seemed like she was preparing to leave her current life behind. But if she did intend to disappear, why leave behind her bank cards, her ID, and most of her personal belongings? These are crucial items that would make starting over nearly impossible. Another possibility is that Maura accepted a ride from the wrong person after the crash. Route 112 is isolated and dark, a perfect place for something sinister to unfold. The last person to see her, a local bus driver named Butch Atwood, described her as shaken but uninjured. She declined his help, saying she had already called for roadside assistance, though phone records show she hadn't. Some locals reported seeing a strange red pickup truck parked near the crash site that night, its headlights flickering in the distance before fading away. Some theorized that Maura, perhaps disoriented from the crash and alcohol, wandered into the woods and succumbed to the bitter cold. Temperatures that night dipped well below freezing, and the snow was unforgiving. But even this theory struggles to hold up. Extensive searches with dogs and thermal imaging found no sign of her. Not a single piece of clothing or evidence of her presence in the surrounding woods. One of the more debated theories is that Maura wasn't alone that night. Some believe she was traveling in tandem with another driver, someone who was following her up Route 112. The idea is that when she crashed, she simply got into the second car and vanished. This would explain the lack of footprints in the sudden disappearance of her scent trail. But if this is true, who was driving that second car, and where did they take her? To this day, Maura Murray's disappearance remains one of the most puzzling mysteries of the Northeast. Over the years, there have been multiple searches, each one turning up empty. In 2021, authorities searched a home in Lincoln, New Hampshire, following a lead that her remains might be buried there. After hours of digging, nothing was found. Her family continues to search for answers, running a dedicated website and keeping her story alive in the hopes that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Despite countless searches, exhaustive investigations, and endless speculation, no solid evidence has ever surfaced. Maura's case remains unsolved. So what really happened to Maura Murray on that cold February night? Did Maura plan her own disappearance and vanish without a trace? Or did she fall victim to foul play on that desolate road?